Well, here's my favorite thing. This is what I love. Second gear and the long pull.
Yeah, yeah.
Welcome to another episode of Jay Leno's Garage. As you know, we are huge Porsche fans here at the shop because Porsche fans like to drive their cars. You know, I meet a lot of Italian exotics and people brag, this car's only got 1,200 miles. Mine's got 900 miles. Every Porsche guy you meet, 60, 70,000, 100,000 miles. And this car here is a beautiful 1964 Porsche 356C. We're going to talk about putting some of these fancy looking parts in this car and making it a bit more modern while still keeping the classic look. But let's meet the owner of this car, Anand Rajani. Come on in. How are you? Did I say it right?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, very
Nice to
good.
see you.
Well, it's a beautiful car. So tell me the story of this car. You know, Porsches are like people's children. They always want to trace back and find out all the history. What's the story on this one?
Well, you know, I actually had a 911 Carrera S first, and I went to go visit with one of my best friends from medical school. And we met up for breakfast, and he said, yeah, I bought my father this new car, and he had a 964 Porsche. And he said, I got him this little 63 356, and you got to see it. It's great, slate gray.
Right.
So he pulled up and he parked next to me, and I didn't even want to get back into my own car after
Wow.
I saw that car because it was just so beautiful, the
Yeah.
chrome and just the way the light hit it. It was just gorgeous, and then I was entranced. So I started looking for one, and last year I happened to find this one in Southern California. And I talked to one of my friends about it, and he said, oh, this is a great car. You know,
Yeah.
it's really dry and straight, and I think you'd really like it. So
So how many cars did you look at? Are you a real picky guy? Did you look at like a whole bunch, or was this the first one you saw? What's the story? How many did you look at before you bought this one?
well, I actually bought a basket case 56 T1 or early 356A first and learned my lesson when we uncovered all the Bondo that I really needed to find somebody who was smarter than me when it came to looking at this car to educate myself.
Okay.
So I talked to a good friend, and he was the one that recommended the car. And so when he told me that this was the car to get, I leapt for it.
Was it basically in this condition?
It wasn't. It was a tired original.
Right.
Original interior in the car. It had been repainted once in 1976 from the information that I had from the last owner.
Right.
But it definitely had been loved. And
Right.
like you mentioned, it's one of those cars that had been driven pretty heavily, almost daily, until the mid-1980s when the owner put it away in his garage just here in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And sat there until I bought it in July of last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously you've done a paint, you've done a new paint job, and it looks like you freshened up the interior a bit.
Right. You also got re-chromed and new seals. And
Tell me about the little book. I found that interesting.
yeah, let me show the book to you. It's pretty interesting. This book actually was from the second owner. He bought this car in 1967 because he couldn't afford a 912. He was about $1,000 short when he was graduating from the Naval Academy. But he took incredible care of this car, and what he ended up doing was writing down every single time he filled it up with gas, how many miles he went, miles per gallon. Every lube is documented in here, every paint job, and you know, gaskets, seals, things that were changed are all chronicled in here.
Wow.
So it was clear that the car was really loved, and so I've continued to ride in it.
Oh, you kept up the tradition every time you
That's
get
right.
gas?
Yeah, my wife laughs at me, but I keep a Porsche pencil in my glove box and write in it every time.
I didn't realize there was a Porsche pencil. That's amazing that there's even a custom pencil for Porsche.
That's
wow,
right.
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, that's what these cars do to people. I love mine. They're just fantastic, fantastic cars. Now, the thing I really find fascinating, and we have sort of a connection, you and I, because you sent this to a good friend of mine, John Willhoit Restoration. How'd you find out about him? Because you're up in Fresno, right?
That's right. That's right. I live in Fresno. Yeah, I actually had reached out to John a couple of times when I was looking at restoring my other car, my 1956 356, but it was pretty far gone. Oh. And anyway, I ended up coming back to visit John again after I had this car because it just, as fun as it was to drive and as pleasurable as it was, it just didn't kind of make the power on the high end that I really wanted. It was a little bit slow. I actually drive this car to work.
Yeah.
And so because I work so much, it was difficult for me to just leave it in the garage and drive it on the weekends.
Right.
So to get on the freeway appropriately and to come up to speed, Just needed something with a little bit more pull.
Yeah, that's what I always
So,
tell people.
yeah.
I live in a hilly area, so I need that little extra 700 or 800 horsepower to get you up over the hill. Yeah, yeah. Does that work on the wife? Honey,
That's right.
I'm a little afraid we don't have the power to get on the freeway. Oh, well, gee, I wouldn't want you to do anything. Yeah. That always works.
Yeah, that's right.
Good right there. Now, so you took the original motor out of this, correct? And what's that,
I did.
sitting on a shelf somewhere?
It's actually sitting at John's shop.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's stored there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have John here, and he's going to take us through the car and tell exactly what he did. But thanks for being such a caring owner. That's fantastic.
My pleasure.
John,
Nice
come on
to
in.
meet
You too. You too. Hey, John.
Anand, how you doing?
Hey, John.
Good to see you.
How are
Jay.
you?
How
All
you
right.
doing?
So you're the guy.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with John, we met because I bought a car, my 1963 Carrera, that he had restored back in the 70s, and I bought it from that guy. And to make a long story short, I said, well, who's a good 4-cam guy? Because I'm looking at this 4-cam, and I called him, and he goes, the car you're looking at, that's my car. Oh, okay, come on and look at it. And so we got to be friends from that, and of course, he does wonderful servicing, and you literally build new engines, correct?
Yeah, most of the components are new. We
Okay.
basically use the original 356 engine, and through development over about a dozen years, we're now getting the engines up to 2132cc.
Okay, from
So
16,
from
right?
a 1600. So
Right.
from 1.6 liter to 2.1 liter.
And the nice thing I like, because there are always people that want to go back to stock.
Yeah.
You take the engine out of this and you put it on the shelf and
Sure.
you put it back to original specs, so it can go back in the car at any time. Meanwhile, you have fun with this engine, which you can blow up and rev and do whatever you want because
Yeah.
you're not ruining a piece of history.
Right.
Okay, very
Right.
cool.
Now we can also do this to the original engine.
Right,
if
right.
That's if you want to have.
No, I think that's
the
a smart way to
matching
do
number.
it.
But
because
yeah, this is what
way
a lot of people do.
You have the matching number.
Yeah.
Who knows in 50 years, 100 years, what people are going to want,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah.
But the thing I find interesting, so do you start with an old 356 engine, or do you make new bottom end, new everything?
Okay, here are some of the components. What we start with, this is part of the original crankcase. Now this is an original period correct 356 crankcase. We
Now,
start,
where do you find these, though? That's
well, you know, over 40 years working on cars and collecting cars, and I have accumulated a
yeah.
lot
So
of
you got them when they
parts.
weren't
Yeah.
worth anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so I have a lot of engine cases.
Right.
And so we take the late engine case,
Right.
which has all the reinforcements and everything that Porsche developed into the car. And the changes we make, the heart of this engine is our 91 millimeter cylinder and piston. Now that cylinder is made out of a cast iron material called Durabar.
Okay.
It's a machinable cast iron.
So you make this one.
We make those.
Right.
This is a stock cast iron cylinder. Now you can see the difference in the size.
Right.
I mean, this one literally
yeah.
fits right over the original one.
But this is not Nicocel or anything like that, right?
no,
This is all, okay.
we actually tried Nicocel cylinders. I don't really see any advantage, and they're a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
And the Durabar is really durable. It's heat stable.
Right.
And we've had really good luck with it.
Okay. So what rings do you use? Do you do different?
We use a special. This is the piston that we use. The pistons are made by J&E.
Okay.
It's a forged piston, and basically, this is the package for the 2.1 liter. You can see, if you look at a stock piston, I don't have a stock piston
Right.
with me, but the skirt's a lot shorter because we've moved the pin up into the piston as far as we can. We go from a 22 millimeter wrist pin to a 19 millimeter. This 91 millimeter piston weighs, it's 60 grams lighter than a stock 1600 piston.
Wow. Okay.
So it's already a lot lighter and it's a lot stronger, and we use a real modern ring package.
And what's the compression ratio with this?
In this particular engine, it's just over 10.1.
Oh, okay. So you have to run premium, obviously.
Yeah, you run premium fuel.
Yeah.
But because we're going to a bigger engine, we end up going to a longer stroke. So this is a crankshaft I have made by Scat.
Okay.
And we go to a Honda rod bearing, which is real popular with the V8 guys.
Yeah. Oh, I know Scat. They do
Yeah.
really nice work.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, this is my proprietary crank that they make for me, and it's 82 millimeters where the stock one is 74.
Okay.
So with the 70 or the 82 stroke and the 91 bore, we come out to 2132 cc. And the rod, you can see the difference in the rods, Jay. This is a stock rod, and this is the Carrillo that we make.
Yeah.
It's a smaller big end.
I see. Yeah,
smaller
okay.
wrist pin. The rod is 115 grams lighter.
There you are. It is. Yeah. Okay.
So you're taking a lot of the weight off the crankshaft's turning around. You're
You
reducing that weight.
When we were building our Doble steam car, it was really frustrating because we had to keep making pistons because we found at certain temperatures, different metals would expand at different rates. We think we had it. How many, or maybe you know right from the get-go, how many sets of pistons you go through before you realize, oh, no, this metal is you know what I mean?
Well, interestingly, you know, we've been building 356 engines for a long time.
Right.
So I already had figured out the right alloy, the right range
Gotcha.
package, the right clearance, everything. So that, I really didn't have to reinvent that. That's
Right,
something
okay.
that was pretty well known. What I did have to change, and what's been a lot of the development work, is coming up with cylinder heads that work properly.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine a 2.1 liter engine breathes a lot more air than a 1600.
Right.
So what we're doing right now, and this is the newest cylinder head that we have, we're using a larger intake and a larger exhaust valve.
Okay.
They're stainless valves. I have a special valve guide. Everything except for the casting is new. Basically, it's new and it's all been developed.
And what are the seats? Are they hardened?
The seats are a hardened seat.
Right.
Now, all the chambers now, once we spent hours on the flow bench coming up with the correct flow numbers that'll make the most power with this particular engine configuration, then we make a digital design of the chamber. So now the chambers, we cut each one with a CNC.
Okay.
So every chamber is the same. So there's no more like, oh, we got to match the pistons to the
Right.
head so to get the right compression.
And you don't have to notch the piston for the other valve, huh?
No, because you see the intake valve comes straight down.
Oh,
the
I see.
exhaust valve comes
At an angle. So
at an
I
angle.
see.
So
Okay.
it's kind of like what they call a semi-Hemi. It's only Hemi on one side.
Right. Cool. Cool.
But then what I do at JE with the pistons is I have them digitize the chamber, and then they're able to make a dome on the piston that's digitally matched to the cylinder head.
Okay.
So that reduces the amount of weight on the dome, and then they're able to back cut it three-dimensionally. So it really, we end up with a really light piston.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, anytime you can take weight off
Sure.
the reciprocating weight, it's good.
So anybody that has a 356, they could take the engine out of the car themselves, bring it to
Yeah.
you, and what would it cost
can
to do
build
one
them.
of these engines? They pretty expensive?
Well, it kind of depends what we start with. If
Yeah.
if you just come to me and say, John, I want an engine with exhaust, with everything all ready to go in, it's about $35,000.
Okay. Okay. Because I would come to you and say, okay, what's the most horsepower
Yeah.
we can get? What's the most horsepower you can get from one of these?
Now you got to remember, I'm building these for street,
Right.
And we have
And
certain
pump
limits and pump gas, and
Right.
we have limitations as far as you know the external components. I
Right.
don't want to use a new carburetor that looks different. I don't want
Right,
to change
gotcha.
the exhaust system. With the setup that Anand has in his car, which is relatively conservative, it's 145 horsepower
Okay.
at 6,000.
So that's like
it's
a
not
Carrera.
yeah, it's not a high revving engine.
Right.
And it makes 145 foot-pounds of torque, which is considerably more than the Carrera
What
made.
was it, 92 or something?
Well, the stock SC, which was the
Right.
engine, the high-performance engine at the time, with a pushrod motor, was 95 horsepower.
Okay.
And 92 foot-pounds. So we're basically taking the horsepower and the torque, and we're increasing it by 50%.
And what oil do you recommend for these motors? You run a synthetic and all?
We use Swepco 306.
Okay. I'm not
which is
familiar with that one.
Swepco is pretty common oil, pretty
Okay.
well known, but there's a lot of different oils.
Does it have zinc in it? Or
It
no?
has the high zinc.
So you need the zinc for this motor.
You need that
Okay.
for any flat tappet engine.
You know, we should explain to people how important that is. Well, you would know this. I've used aftermarket zinc, where you just buy the zinc and you pour it in your crankcase. I think that works, Do you find it works?
Well, I mean, it probably does, but
Right.
there's so many oils now because once they started to take the zinc and the anti-wear additives out of the oil because they were causing problem with the catalytic converters.
Right. See, the zinc has got metal in it, obviously.
Yeah, so it messes
And
up the catalytic
It gets the
converter.
catalytic converter, it makes it run hot, and it burns itself out. Okay.
Yeah.
But these old cars need the zinc.
They need the zinc as an anti-wear additive.
Yeah.
And so once they started taking it out of regular oil for the modern cars,
Mm-hmm.
all the oil manufacturers figured out pretty fast that they needed to have an oil specifically for
Yeah.
the older cars.
So you want to buy a classic oil.
Yeah,
if
you want to
have-
buy something that's made for
Yeah,
vintage
yeah.
cars.
People just think, oh, well, new oil's better than old oil. I'll just put in this. And they realize a lot of times it's too thin because it's you know, obviously the gaps are a little bit bigger in the
Sure.
older cars.
Yeah.
So that's just something to remember. Because I know a buddy of mine had an MG and the cam wore out in like 2,500 miles because he's
Yeah.
putting in brand new,
Yeah.
you know, synthetics, you know,
Yeah.
050, some thin thing.
Well,
yeah.
we saw that about
Yeah.
10 years ago. We started to get engines in, and almost every one of them had a worn-out camshaft. And then finally it came back to the oil, and we've pretty much solved that problem now.
Now, can this stock transmission take the extra power of this motor? Do you have to beef that up as well?
We don't beef it up. This is a completely stock transmission. We do offer, you know, some improvement on the parts. We have we can put a limited slip or torque biasing differential,
Right.
and different axles that we can use in the transmissions.
Right.
But as long, I mean, you can hurt the transmission if you try to hurt it.
Right.
In normal driving, it's not an issue.
Okay.
It's not an issue. What we did do with this car, though, which is real popular, is we increased the spring rate. We increased the size of the torsion bars front and rear about 20%. This car has Coney shocks on it. It's got my company 17.5 millimeter front sway bar, and then we have stiffer rubber bushings for the suspension.
Okay.
And that really tightens up the car. The ride height's stock. The wheel and tire size on this car is completely stock. Anand wanted to
Yeah, I love the
stick
look
with
of
the
it.
wheel and tire size.
Because we had Rod Emery here, and he was going on and on about your short shifter kit. Because
Oh,
I
yeah,
noticed on
yeah,
my career
yeah.
too,
Yeah, it's
way over
You don't want
here.
to hit your knuckles
your
on the
third is way
dashboard,
over
yeah.
there. Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah, this has a short shift kit in it, and yeah, I brought you one of those to try.
oh yeah, I would love to try
your
that. I'd love to put
Carrera,
that in.
so.
Because plus people can go to your website and buy any one of these
They
items
can buy
separately.
the components.
Okay.
I've sold the components to people that want to build their own engine.
Right, right.
We can also do the cylinder heads.
So we can take this for a ride. I've got my people distracting on it, so he won't realize we're
Yeah,
gone.
no,
we'll
we
be
don't
out
want
driving
him
his
to
car
find
around.
out,
No, no. So, all right. Before we take it out, can we take a look at the engine? See how stock it looks.
Sure, sure.
Let's take a look.
Okay.
Wow, you're gonna have professional lighting in there. Yeah.
Well, you know, that comes a certain perks, you know.
No,
that you
obviously
get
those
with
are our lights, but okay. So now, here's something I find fascinating. It's a Porsche. It's a '64. It's got four-wheel disc brakes, and it's still 6 volts, isn't it? Is that the last year, '64?
Yeah, you know, they had an option for 12 volt that came out in '64, but I had a customer one time that bought one of these new, and I remember he said Porsche called him when they were getting ready to build the car and asked him if he wanted 6 volt, and he said, well, what do I mean, wanted 12 volt.
Right.
And it was like an extra $24 or something.
Yeah.
And he said, what do I need that for? And
But you
So
know,
he
in their
didn't buy
defense,
it.
6 volt has always worked fine, because when you convert, a lot of times people convert these cars to 12 volts, and they don't change the wires, thinking all wires are the same. 6 volt wire is thicker, and you have to change every single wire, every light bulb, the radio, everything to get it to work.
yeah, I mean, we don't typically change the wires in these, but
Yeah.
we can convert them to 12 volt.
Yeah.
And if you want to run a modern radio or you want to charge your phone or that sort of thing.
Well, I have a friend up north named Don Allen, Alternator Don, and he converts generators to alternators. And they also convert 6 volt generators to alternators. So with an alternator instead of
So
generator.
it's a 6 volt alternator.
It's a 6 volt.
Oh, that's
my
great.
Hudson
Yeah.
Hornet has a 6 volt alternator, and it works perfectly well. I mean, you wouldn't know that, especially in California where it doesn't get freezing or anything.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
really need that, but I'm surprised this one still runs a generator.
Well, we were surprised that this car with 6-volt seems to start great. Everything works great. Anand wanted to keep it 6-volt, didn't want to change it. And I'm impressed with how well it works. You'd think it would take more power to start it, but it works fine.
The thing that annoys me is people go, oh, if you have a 6-volt, put an 8-volt battery in there, and that'll give you an extra. All you do is burn everything out. It's so stupid. You know, it doesn't.
No,
it's
that doesn't work.
Not made for it.
Yeah.
Now, tell me about the ignition. Are we typical points and plugs? Or have you got a modern?
No, this has points.
Wow.
It's completely stock ignition.
Right.
We do, I have the distributors recurved. I have a special curve that I developed with actually an electronic setup on the dyno. But I have a special curve that we put into the distributors.
Okay.
It's a little bit different that matches the engine properly.
But I thought for sure you would have some sort of modern electronic distributor under the stock looking cab.
No, it actually works fine. My experience is that, you know, a lot of these guys want to drive their cars up north, you know, where there's all kinds of meats all over. And if you're out in the middle of nowhere and your Wazoo electronic thing has a problem, then you're done.
Yeah, I know. Trying to find someone to fix a Wazoo electronic thing, that's really bad. I don't use any Wazoo products. I think they're just awful.
Yeah.
They're like thingamajigs. Another one.
No, they're
thingamajig is bad. The
that's
Wazoo,
bad.
they're all bad. You don't want to use any of those.
No.
No.
But no, this actually works fine with the points.
But it really is a classic example of tastefully old and new. You know, just keep it all looking stock.
And if you look at it, it's a completely. You could go to a show with this.
Yeah.
And nobody would.
Well, let me ask you about that now. Do you have? And I always ask Porsche guys this because I know so many guys are so every sticker has to be exactly.
Oh yeah.
Are there people that boo-hoo you for doing this? Do they think it's like, you know, you go to a Porsche show, oh, I'm sorry, you've upgraded the engine and made it more usable?
I mean, I'm a big guy, Jay, so usually I don't have.
Oh, you don't have those problems?
No. But no, seriously, people. There are people that say, well, what do you want to do that for?
Right.
I don't know what it is, but there's something, you know, if we have a lawnmower with a 3-horse motor, we want the special spark plug so we can get an extra, you know, 3 1/4.
Sure.
I mean, there's something about men, I think, especially, we just want more power.
But many women want power too.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
That's right.
Do not write us a letter.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
the
You
women
have to
are
say that
fine.
now.
Yeah, no,
You have to
I
say that.
I understand.
Many women own 356s and also do the modification.
Yeah.
So you have to say that now because you can't.
Yeah, you can't take any chances.
So careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I love here how the exhaust exits through the bumper. You know, and that's interesting, you know, since they got rid of leaded gas, that stays clean. I can remember
they'd
for
get all
years,
white.
back in the 60s, the lead and the water would just eat through that and be all corroded, you know. So it shows you how much cleaner cars run than they used to. Well, very good. You got the stock air cleaners. Tell me about this air cleaner modification you did here.
You know, the only thing we've done on this is I put a European-style oil breather hose.
Right.
Originally, they ran the breather into the air cleaner, which actually seems to work fine, but it's just
Makes a mess.
Yeah, I mean, you're not that this has a lot of.
And the idea what is so
fumes.
it doesn't.
Well, it was recirculating the crankcase pressure, and whatever exhaust or pressure might come into the crankcase would get recirculated.
Right.
So it was an early smog control.
Yeah, and these here are your.
Those were carburetor preheaters. That's something that we don't even understand in California.
Oh, they're supposed to be a.
It's got a rod here.
Right.
It's got a bellows in the back, and when the bellows expands, it closes the carb heater. But this would come from the heating system of the car. It would blow warm air onto the carburetor.
And the heating system of the car is really a joke. There's really not much heating in these. No.
Yeah, I mean, usually by the time it heats up, and you're probably all where you're going anyway.
Right.
Plus, you're taking air from the engine compartment.
Right.
And pumping it into the inside of the car. That never seemed like a good idea.
Why did he fall asleep and go off the road? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a beautiful, beautiful engine. Can we take it for a spin and see how it goes?
Absolutely.
Wow, I love the short shifter.
Yeah, it's nice.
You know what's interesting to me? I don't know if it's because of my age or whether it's because of what I remember, but driving an old car just seems so much nicer than driving a new car. I mean, I love this big steering wheel.
Yeah.
You know, I love it in the Gullwing. I love it in my 356. I don't know why that is. I mean, everything seems clearer and simpler to me than it does in a modern car. And this is more fun for me to drive than a modern car. But boy, I tell you, the difference in the spring rate, what do you say, it's about 20% stiffer?
This is 20% stiffer.
I mean,
yeah.
It's perfect. It really makes it handle. I don't feel the wheel tuck under. What I love about older cars, there are so many different ways to get, before air conditioning was prevalent, so many different ways to get air into the car. The vent wing.
Oh, yeah.
Some even had windshields. You could, you know, you could turn a lever
Sure,
and it would
sure.
open, you know.
Yeah.
But it's comfortable, it handles.
But this is a great road to drive this car.
This is one of the great myths of California, that it's all traffic. You know, it is on the 405 and the 210 and the 101. But you go 5 miles. We are 5 miles from my shop. I have not seen another car. And you come up here, this is where I see the Singer boys and all these guys test their cars up here. Magnus and everybody.
Yeah.
You know, because it's got switchbacks. It's a fast road. I must say, it feels like a lot more than 145 horsepower. I guess that's the torque, isn't it?
Yeah, because this engine, from 3,300 to 5,300, which is the perfect driving range RPM-wise, it's making over 140 foot-pounds of torque.
Yeah.
So that's what you feel is that flat torque curve.
You know, I always say this, that horsepower sells cars, torque wins races.
There you go.
And that's kind of the way it goes. And I must say, I love this short shifter, kid. If you've got a 356 and you get tired of that long throw, order one of these short shifter kits. It really transforms. I mean, boom, I'm right there. It's really nice. Boy, what fun this is to drive. You know, whenever we have Porsches, we always seem to find the excuse to go on a little longer test ride. So we'll take this up on the freeway and see how she cruises a little bit, and then we'll head back to the garage and give you my final assessment. I think it's pretty obvious what it's going to be, but what an amazing automobile. Come on, let's take it up on the freeway. Well, here's my favorite thing. This is what I love. Second gear and the long pull.
Yeah.
I love spending a couple of seconds in second gear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And just watching it sweep across.
Sure.
I mean, I've mentioned this before. You know, you get into P1. Now I'm doing 180 and I'm in prison. Okay.
Yeah, right.
A lot of torque. Boy, what a treat this is. I want to thank John Willhoit. That's John Willhoit Restorations. Go to their website. If you're looking for one of these short shifter kits, or you've got a 356, I mean, this is the college for these cars. I mean, these guys really do a heck of a job. And Anand, thank you for letting me drive this car. It was so much fun to drive. Yeah, we always wind up adding an extra 30 or 40 miles to the drive when we road test one of these.
But we won't tell them about that.
No.
One incident.
No. But I just drive so many cars that are uncomfortable, and just because they're race cars for the street, you're just getting beat up. Whereas this is just a pleasure, and it's so tight. It's really like a new car. John, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks
All right,
for
thank you.
the opportunity.
And, we'll see you guys next week with something else.